Wide Angle Conversations, DEI Talks, an initiative of Life by Design with Taruna Aggarwal. Raising awareness about the importance of diversity and inclusion and bringing to you insights and best practices from DEI advocates and champions.
Sure.
Hi, welcome to Wide Angle Conversations, DEI Talks. I am your host, Taruna Aggarwal, and I'm in conversation today with Laina Raveendran Greene, CEO and founder of Angels of Impact, a social venture offering funding and technical assistance to women and indigenous-led community-based enterprises that are tackling poverty, gender equality, and sustainability. She is a TEDx speaker and the co-author of a book, Sustainable Impact, How Women Are Key to Ending Poverty. Hi, Laina. Welcome to Wide Angle Conversations, DEI Talks.
Thank you, Taruna, for the invitation to speak with you.
Thank you. Laina, when I see you and I see your work, I see that you are driven by the passion and purpose to empower women. Tell us a little bit more about this.
Women are already empowered and we have the power within us. It is really the system that we live in that disempowers us, right? So, I am very, very passionate about creating new systems. I used to be very passionate about fighting against systems. And then I decided that that's a bigger task to take. And so why not work on creating new systems instead, right? And so therefore, the work that I do is about how can we create new systems that enable empowered women to shine, right? So that to bring out the power in them that's already there. Now, why is this important and why I'm so passionate about it is because I really do believe that the problems that we face in the world today has really been the result of sort of like the over imbalance of a world dominated with colonization and patriarchy. And this has really led us to a world where it is all about extraction for the personal good of a few, right? Separation with spirit, things like nurturing are seen as soft skills that are looked down upon. It's about competition. It's about domination with force. And we've really become so imbalanced on that side. And I look at what the work that I do is elevating the other side that creates more of a balance in this world, right? Things such as nurturing, things such as collaboration, bringing back spirit, bringing back regeneration, even spirituality, right? And some of my Native American friends call it rematriation. I really like that a lot because we hear terms like repatriation, but rematriation is about bringing the feminine balance back into the world, but also to have our connection at a spiritual level with Mother Earth. And so I'm very passionate about that. And myself follow the Baha'i faith, and in the Baha'i writings, we are told that the world of humanity is like a bird with two wings. One wing is women, the other is men. And not until both wings are equally developed that the bird cannot fly. So it is to our collective humanity's purpose that the uplifting of women, I feel, is a very key role. That's why I'm so passionate about it.
Yeah. And so beautifully put, really, we really do need that balance, right, of feminine and masculine. You yourself have had the lived experience of being a woman of color in Singapore and in the US, right? So how far do you think this living with this identity, how has that been, and how has it helped shaped you into who you are today?
Yeah, thank you for that question. Of course, the term women of color was something I only more recently came across, right? I never really thought of myself that way. But in terms of being aware of being a woman and being aware of a person of color was very much a part of my existence from very young on, because I was raised in Singapore. And even here in Singapore, I, face discrimination at a daily level, not only from fellow Singaporeans, but unfortunately also from the Indian community, because we've been colonized ourselves and taken on colorism, right? So even within the community, I was considered a dark-skinned Indian, sort of written off. So that became a part of my reality, things that you were very aware that opportunities were, glass ceilings were much more frequently set. So thankfully, I'm a bit of a rebel. So when someone tells me that something I'm not, I've had incidents in school where I'll put up my hand and my teacher would just say, "You can't possibly know the answer." I've had growing up in Singapore been called names like Snow Black, Blackie, even in school where I had to learn to sit down and eat by myself at the cafeteria because nobody wanted to sit with me. But that because I was not only rebellious but also resilient, I think I then pushed myself to constantly prove that I can do it. And so if you look back at my sort of like all the different experiences in my life, some people go like, wow, you've done so much. In some ways, it's the very glass ceilings. Every time I came across a glass ceiling, I would push to go a little bit further, push to go a little bit further, always knowing I needed to be 10 times better than somebody else to be able to get that opportunity. So in many ways, that experience has colored me, or that lived experience has made me understand the lack of opportunities that other women of color face. So when I ran a tech business in Singapore, in fact, I was one of the first tech entrepreneurs in Singapore back in 96, even before anybody was talking about entrepreneurship. In fact, a lot of people would say to me, "Oh, you couldn't get a job, is it?" That was your response when you did a startup, And I was finding it, even with customers like Cisco, and we were a very successful company, I had difficulty getting funding, whereas I would see my, either a white male or a Chinese male getting funded, whereas we were doing a lot more business than they were. So when I started Angels of Impact, which is, as you mentioned, a social venture to fund and offer technical assistance, we primarily focused on what we call marginalized women, so who are predominantly women of color, women who are rural, because I was very, very mindful that if I, who have been educated in Singapore, went to Harvard, face these issues, what more a woman in Indonesia or a woman in Cambodia? So it did very much color how I look at the work and the contribution that I can make, is that my lived experience gives me the empathy of understanding, seeing, validating the work of other women of color. So my area of, as I mentioned, I focus a lot on poverty, gender equality, and sustainability, right? So we look at all three in one box. And in the area of poverty, unfortunately, there is a term called feminization of poverty, which is 1 out of 7 women, this is old statistics, live in poverty. After the pandemic, that number is actually higher because, as you know, during the pandemic, women were the most hit. We've all the strides that we made to eradicate extreme of poverty, we've actually gone back to 30 years ago in many ways of the elimination of extreme poverty. So women are the sort of predominant victims, so to speak, of this. And SDG 1, which is no poverty, is actually very central to all the 17 SDGs, right? So you clean water, health, education, etc. They're all tied to poverty. So women are literally the lever, because not only are they the key victims, so to speak, they are also the solution. Women failure is not an option for a woman. She cannot get up today and say, "Oh, I live in poverty, therefore I can't do anything." Harish Hande, who is the CEO of Selco, gave beautiful examples of how entrepreneurial that woman is, who wakes up and has to feed her family, finds a way to go out, get a loan from a loan shark who charges, say, 70% interest, go out there, buy vegetables, find a way to sell the vegetable, play the loan shark back, and still feed her children. So women are very resilient. They've been shown to produce 20% more profit with 50% less capital. So, it's a very effective way of putting capital into having women. They also give back more. Women give back up to 90% of whatever they earn to their families and communities, compared to men who only give back up to 30%, right? So you have a multiplier impact that when you uplift a woman, she uplifts her entire community and her family as well. So that's why focusing on women becomes very key. Unfortunately, because of the colonized patriarchal system that we have, the system of finance tends to finance the man to help the woman as the beneficiary. So that's the other part that we are trying to struggle against, is to stop seeing women as beneficiaries. We've made some inroads on the gender lens investing side where people are saying, let's look at women as fund managers, as board members, but the intersectionality in gender and race hasn't really been addressed. So when it comes to women of color, there's a tendency to still look at women of color as beneficiaries. So you would get a white woman helping women of color, and etc. So those are the kind of things that I think if we can unlock the unconscious biases and focus on elevating women of color and marginalized women, we will achieve all the 17 SDGs very, very quickly.
I agree with you. As you rightly said, if we empower a woman, we empower the community and the tribe, and it has got deep-rooted positive impact on everything as we move forward in that. But and you did mention, about the fact that we really need to work on that, on really the inclusion and the intersectionality, and not see women as a beneficiary, but a woman of substance of her own, somebody of her own substance. Let's look at it from the other lens as well. So let's focus on the corporate, on businesses that are actually powering economic growth, and we talk about corporate responsibility. So tell me a little bit more about how the corporate responsibility and the NGO sector can partner in a stronger way to drive what you are looking at achieving.
Yeah, one of the things that worries me a little bit about corporate social responsibility is that it is always seen as like, I do my business and then I do a little bit part of it for good, right? And therefore, the focus has always been on the NGO sector in terms of charity. And this is, again, the problem with poverty, right? When you look at Professor Muhammad Yunus's books, Creating a World Without Poverty, he actually tells us that poverty is created by the system. So if we want to change it, we have to create a change in the system. The same works for corporate responsibility. There's 90%, let's say if they did even 2% CSR, the 98% of how they do business is equally important, right? The 2% right now is only going to charity, which is perpetuating the model of the beneficiary model. So that's where social enterprises and social businesses actually come in, because if you can funnel some of that money to the people on the ground who are creating the solutions, and not just funnel money, but also technical assistance maybe into them, but also integrating them into your supply chain. So as you are fulfilling those ESG reports or whatever you're doing, don't try to just do it on your own, but actually partner with them in a way that they are actually fulfilling your own requirements, so that together you can make a better world. Unfortunately, in Singapore, I find that a lot of CSR is still very siloed in terms of only supporting charities and not looking at social entrepreneurship as well. So I'd strongly recommend everyone picks up a copy of Muhammad Yunus's book, Creating a World Without Poverty, where he really challenges us to look at things differently. Anand Giridas's book, Winner Takes All, is also a very powerful one for corporates in the CSR space. To look at it different. Michael Potter, just to add one more last thing, Michael Potter has actually been trying to get companies to move away from CSR and looking at shared value. And so shared value is actually a much more powerful way of looking at partnership.
Yes, absolutely. And you know what? So recently I've also started a social enterprise, and it's called the Good Connect. And the aim is actually exactly what you were talking about, which is that, CSR being, don't just direct your funds, a little bit of the fund to a charity known, and that is in your, which is very known and familiar to people, the larger ones, but there are so many more who are doing good work. You need to build their capacity as well. So I think there is that need for partnering with social enterprises like yours and even mine, who can enable you to go to enhance your supplier diversity, go to a larger number of organizations that are really doing good work. So I totally agree with you when you say, that partnership is very much important, and that shifting CSR as just being one little percentage of what you're doing towards being responsible businesses, I think, and that is the need for the future as well.
Correct. I just wanted to add on that, actually. Angels of Impact, we've quite successfully partnered with some corporates like SAP, for example, Facebook and others, where what we do is they have the need of having satisfied employees who feel that they are giving back. And we're able to do a proper matching in which some of them can actually provide technical assistance to the social enterprises that we work with. So we've got models in which CSR can be used more effectively to actually make an impact on the ground.
Yeah, agree. There are so many ways in which we can make that impact on the ground. It's just about kind of, looking at it with that lens, right? And creating an awareness with, this conversation that I'm having with you. That's like, when people hear about it. And of course, there is recently Patagonia has, they shifted the entire focus of their business. So I think there is that need for more and more businesses to think in that direction. And, that brings me also to, in the corporate world, when and the terms that we often are hearing right now, sustainable development being the main focus. Let me ask you, right? So social inclusion, your SDG goals, ESG, or climate change crisis, these are things that we are really living with right now and people are focusing on. But where does the biggest accountability lie if we really want to secure a sustainable future for the planet and for our people? What is the most important thing that we should be focusing on?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I could probably take an entire conversation with you on that. There's so many different elements to the terms that you just used, right? So, for example, ESG. Some people take it just from the point of view of being able to do regulatory compliance and let me just submit. And most of them have either done the E, environment, or G, governance. But most are not looking at the S, which is the social inclusion side of it. And there's a certain element of social justice. And that's because that's messy. And so and then you talked about sustainability and climate. And what I find is that a lot of people like to talk about climate change from a technology perspective or an app or, let's put solar panels around. But again, the human dimension is something that's often left out because, that's again messy, right? That requires going down to very hard truths about the system that we live in right now is really not even broke. The system was actually created to benefit the few at the expense of the all, right? So it requires some really hard conversations of how can we do to make real change. What I think businesses, one of the classes that I teach at NUS is on purpose-led businesses as well, and kinds of shows you the I've been doing that for almost 10 years now. And from the beginning when I was teaching this class, we weren't really using terms like purpose-led businesses, right? Whereas today we are. And what's happened really is a shift in consciousness. And that is when power goes back to the people or the consumer, and the consumer exercises their power, then businesses have no choice but to change, right? So the 98% of business as usual versus 2% CSR no longer will hold true. People are going to look at the Patagonias of the world and say, why are you not doing the same? If I have $1 to buy two products and one product has purpose and is actually making the world a better place, and I'm a conscious consumer, and I'm starting to put my dollar in the other company, this other company has no choice but to change. So the tides are slowly shifting where companies are being forced to change. But because we do lack certain regulatory standards, there is no ESG card per se or reporting standards. We don't have standards on sustainability. That there tends to be some level of whitewashing, obviously, that happens because impact is easy. I mean, I could say, I created a big factory and I made 1,000 people employed, therefore I made an impact, rather than looking at, was the factory environmentally friendly? Are the working conditions friendly? So it's a holistic way. And consumers right now, unfortunately, don't have all the data that they need to be able to make those conscious decisions. The entire system is been built on shareholder maximization of profits. Yeah. And what Patagonia did is a very huge shift of creating what's called a purpose trust company, where it's a non-profit that holds the shares. So it's all about doing good comes first. B Corp, for example, is another structure where you put purpose first before. So regulatory has to change as well. And in this region, for example, we don't have a social enterprise regulations or incentives. We have some incentives in certain countries, but as that's where the top-down approach also helps. Leaving it completely to consumers is not fair either, right? So it is definitely going to take a end-to-end approach. But businesses, obviously, as long as we have the old model of shareholder profit maximization, if there is still consumers willing to buy the old world stuff, then they're going to say, hey, I have to do it because I have to profit maximize. So it's going to take all parties working together to want to make that happen. But the world is burning up. And I think more and more everyone recognizes that. I mean, we've been talking for this for years, right? I was fortunate to be at COP15 in Copenhagen. And even then we were saying the world is burning. And, that was how many years ago. And we're still talking about it today as if it's a new thing, right? But it is burning out in our backyards now.
No, and I really like the term, as you said, right? It's the messy things that we don't want to really touch until it really gets really, I don't know. So I think it is very much that when it is something is messy, we will just probably do on the surface. So I think we need to move and realize that, yes, we are, as you said, it's burning right now, and we really need to take an action right now, shift from being led by business or business for profit to purpose-led businesses, thinking about sustainability, thinking about the world. Well, there is no planet B for us. So thank you, Laina. That was really wonderful. I can go on with this conversation, and I think we will. I will be speaking to you again on this, but thank you so much for sharing that with us. I'm sure the audience have really enjoyed, just as I was deeply into it right now. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Taruna. And as you said, I think we can definitely go on with this conversation. And I really hope that everyone plays your part, and step up. We wrote the book Sustainable Impact, How Women Are a Key to Ending Poverty, because we wanted to give people an idea of how each and every one of us can make a difference and how we can play a role in advocacy as well as a consumer. So I hope we're inspired, and I look forward to more conversations with you.
Absolutely. And yes, we can make a difference, even if it is one starfish at a time, the collective impact is going to be huge. So I think that's what one needs to really think about. Yeah. Thank you so much, Laina, once again.
Thank you.